Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Maybe you've seen those memes that say something about being ready for the weather this week in South Carolina because you've got your heavy winter coat and your bathing suit, your wool socks and your flip-flops, your sunglasses and your umbrella. It's true. The weather here can vary widely in a short period of time. Spring can be that way, certainly. You can have a gorgeous day with warm sunshine and blue sky, and you think that spring has finally come, and you can put cold away. And the next day, there's a cold snap again, and your hopes are dashed. That's how things are. So I often wonder how the trees know. You see, there can be all sorts of signs of spring around. Grass greens up, flowers begin to poke their heads up, buds begin to grow, azaleas can bloom. But all those can happen, and we can still face a pretty severe time of cold. But usually not the trees. When I see trees beginning to put on their leaves, I can be pretty sure that the cold is gone and warmer, more pleasant days are here to stay. That's what's happening now. Everywhere I look, I see flecks of green in the treetops and covering each limb. And so I began to think about trees in the Bible, and it turns out that trees are mentioned a lot and have significant roles to play in the Bible story. This week, that's what we will look at. And I might suggest that you Google the names of these trees so that you have an idea of what they look like. We want to begin today with the broom tree. Now, frankly, outside of the Bible, I had never heard of a broom tree before, but a little investigation revealed that, in fact, it is a kind of juniper. The broom tree isn't majestic, growing only about 8 feet tall at maturity, but it spreads a leafy canopy out in almost an umbrella shape, making an excellent source of shade from the sun. In the Mideast, particularly in the wilderness, this shade would be a welcome relief. Broom trees are mentioned several times in the Bible, often in terms of shelter and rest. For example, when Elijah was running for his life from Queen Jezebel, he found rest under a broom tree, and as he slept, an angel provided food and water for him to strengthen him for the rest of his journey to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. Another mention of the broom tree is found in Numbers, where a village is named Rithmah. In Hebrew, that word means place of the brooms. So it is likely that a lot of broom trees grew there. And in fact, when the Hebrew people passed by on the way from Egypt to the Promised Land, they stopped and rested at Rithmah. There are also another couple of instances where this tree is referred to as a refuge for those who are desperate. And that's the point of referring to these broom trees. When the Bible speaks of a broom tree, it speaks of provision, rest, and shelter. No matter our circumstances, even when all seems hopeless, God shelters us in love and in grace. Broom trees remind us that we rest in God. A second tree we want to look at today is the acacia tree. Acacia is a general term describing 5 types of thornwood shrubs and trees people have harvested for centuries. They are the only hardwood trees that grow in such an arid area as the Mideast. So acacia wood was often used in building things. For example, God instructed Moses to make the Ark of the Covenant out of acacia wood. You may remember that no one touched the ark itself, but it had rings on the side, and poles were fit through the rings so that the ark could be carried from place to place on the poles. These poles were also made of acacia wood. Even more, in the tabernacle, and then later in the temple itself, acacia wood was used to make the table to hold the showbread, special bread dedicated to God that sat in the worship place. And acacia wood was also used to make the altar for burnt offerings. Finally, Isaiah mentions the acacia tree, describing the rich vegetation that will fill the land when God redeems Israel. The hard wood and the use of it in these worship furnishings reminds us of God's steadfastness and truth in keeping God's promises. The weather can be variable, and life can be too. There are storms and cold fronts in life, and we might long for the sign of better times to come. No matter what, we can be sure in what the trees remind us. God shelters us, and we can count on God. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.